Brian Stemetsky of Valley of Salt. Welcome to JesusWired.com.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I am so excited to chat with you. Now, you are in New Jersey, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. I can tell you have a thick New Jersey accent. I have a thick Australian accent, and somewhere in the middle is beauty. And I'm so happy about this. So it's lovely to
Right,
meet you.
right. Nice to meet you too.
Now, Brian, I'm really excited today because we are here to talk about your upcoming album, Voice of One Crying in the Wilderness, which is out February 3. But before we dive into that exciting release, can you introduce yourself to us, for people who have never met you or Valley of Salt, your band? Tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Brian Stemetsky, and I'm basically Valley of Salt. So Valley of Salt is my band and it's different players, but I'm the one who composes, and I write all the music for the most part. So I'm in New Jersey as we talked about before. And I've been playing, I guess I've been playing since I was in third grade. So I used to play professionally, then I stopped and I got back into it. So again, yeah, that is my band. And this is our first album, and it's a concept album about John the Baptist.
Is which one very exciting, but a really bold move.
Yes,
I was
yeah.
listening through to it. Now, this your album, Voice of One Crying in the Wilderness, it's a progressive rock opera, which took me by surprise, but in a great way, to be clear. And I was listening to it, and I was like, oh wait, it's reminiscent of Jesus Christ Superstar, but more like a modern contemporary version of it, and your musicality is so clear in it. You are so talented. So can you tell us where the idea of this album and this idea about the story of John the Baptist in music came from?
Right. So, as I stated before, I play professionally in rock and jazz bands. I actually have a degree in music. Um, so I stopped playing because I have my own business. I'm a therapist. I have around 70 therapists that work for me. So I'm pretty busy. And as you probably know, there's lots of mental health issues. But so I got back into playing during COVID, and I'm a fan of the Church Band, which is actually an Australian rock band that was around in the 80s. And I decided to get in touch with a person named Marty Willson-Piper from the band. Or an ex-band member of the church. So he has a website and he does this thing called songwriting guidance, and he has session here. So I started meeting with him once a week about possibly writing songs. I never written a song before, just because I didn't think that I could do it. Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah. So after I met with him, the first couple times he's like, "Well, you do actually are able to write songs." And some of the songs I was writing had more complex structures. And he said, "Why don't you try writing something like more progressive rock?" Like, yes. So that was actually where the first song came from. The love of God is all around us, the instrumental. So it came from there, and as we were working on it, he knew about my faith, and we talked about it, and he said, it would be kind of cool if you wrote something about a figure in the Bible, and he mentioned John the Baptist, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I said because he's kind of a rock and roll kind of figure in the Bible, and so is Jesus. Let's face it, So that's how that came about, and when I started writing the songs, what I did is all the songs actually the lyrics are right from the Bible, and all the stories are right from the Bible. So I did it from his birth to his death, and I think I'm sure God really helped me write this because it really came so easily. It was almost just like, wow, this is too easy, and all the instruments. And when I would do it about 2 hours a day writing, and I would just keep adding instruments, and I would add different things, and it just kind of grew from there. But it was quite an easy process to write, even though it doesn't sound that way. Um, and we recorded in Dallas, Texas, and I actually wrote out all the music for everybody except the drums. So it wasn't too hard to record.
Yeah, no, I was so impressed by how every instrument, every track, but every instrument and every track in the production was so meticulously placed. I could tell that you have gone into the depth of John the Baptist's story, but each chapter of it even the sparse little scriptures that there are, and you've really dug into it, because I could feel like I was there beside him, for lack of a better term. Like I was like, oh, this is what it would feel like in that era in antiquity, but also internally, you really touch on his faith struggles and also the great
Right.
power in him, which is what makes him so rock and roll. He was such a misfit and a maverick, and so you sort of really capture that well in the album. Um, when you're sort of going, let's have a look at this task, like the weight of this whole story, was there any sense of apprehension in it? Because it is like, it's exciting, but he's a really significant biblical figure, and carry, like, he paved the way for Jesus. What was it like for you, sort of carrying, if I can say, like, even the spiritual mantle of that story and putting it to song?
Yeah, you know what? I didn't, I'll be honest, I didn't really think about it in that way because I wasn't, I didn't have any expectations of, too many people listening to it. So I just wrote it based on, what I was feeling, what I was guided to write, and I just wrote it that way. Reading in the Bible about the specific parts, and I'm like, oh, this could really be a song. And then I would fool around with the scripture, and then I would come up with something, and in my mind I would think, John the Baptist, he was so wild, and it even says that in the Bible. So it's just like, if he's so wild, he really has to have like lots of guitars, because that is the essence of being wild, guitars. And I think for him, that really shows, in the album. That's why we have so many guitar parts. There's over 25 guitar parts in some of the songs, and they're all different guitar parts. So um, yeah, I wouldn't say it was a daunting task. It was actually a real pleasure to do, because there was no pressure. It was just I was just gonna do this and see where we can go, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really cool. In what ways do you resonate with John the Baptist as a musician? And you can nearly say, like, as a rock and roll musician, if you want to go down that avenue.
Right, right. I would say as a rock musician, just because he told the truth and he wasn't afraid to do that, and he wasn't afraid to take chances, obviously, because I think he probably knew where he was going to end up. And he just did it because that was his calling, and that's what he was brought here to do, is to pave the way. And I think that's what he did. And, I don't know if it's my way to pave the way for this, but it is definitely a different story that I don't think anyone's ever told in a musical sense, because there's not too much on him in the Bible.
No, there isn't. And as I was listening, I didn't read a bio or presser about the album before I started listening. I took it fresh. And after a while, initially I was like, is it about Jesus? And I was like, it's John. And it took me by surprise in a great way, because it's rare that you hear the story of John the Baptist, but like, even it really felt like the gospel narrative through his eyes, up to his death,
Right.
obviously. And that made it really unique in a great way. And I could actually envision it as I was listening to this record, which was beautiful. The lead single was What Did You See? Which, I mean, in many
Right.
ways, it matches up with the calling of John the Baptist. But can you tell me about that track, and how that for you encapsulates the album in some way?
Right. So, what did you see? That was about how people, and when they first saw John the Baptist, by all accounts, he was really wild looking and probably really unkept. So some of the lyrics are right from there. Wild, what looking was he, so he really, I think, probably when people saw him, I would imagine they really were just startled seeing, him, and thinking that this is the guy, who's going to bring about, bring Jesus here. But he was, so again, those lyrics were quite easy. And to be honest, I don't even, looking back on it now, because it's been 2 years since I wrote it. I would imagine inspiration came from God, because I don't remember some of the lyrics. They just came to me, and it was just like, oh, okay, well, that sounds like what it should be, So again, that was to introduce, this is who he is. This is who John the Baptist is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Uh, Something about this album that stood out, and when I watched the music video for What Did You See, is the variety of, the collaboration involved, the variety of people that you have playing in the video. I know that you can play a wealth of instruments yourself, and you could do a lot of this yourself, but you bring in a lot of people on different areas. You bring in different forms of choirs, which is
Right.
beautiful. And I know just from doing my research that some of that was sort of like reminiscent of the music scene in New Jersey. So it was a really special sort of celebration of you and your local sort of music culture in that way. What was it like collaborating on this album?
Yeah, so most of the album actually was recorded in Dallas, Texas, believe it or not. Um,
Of
but yeah,
course.
so we had members of the Dallas Fort Worth Symphony, Dallas members of the local Dallas gospel community, which is a big community, and different musicians in the area, who are just ace musicians, especially the drummers from the Polyphonic Sprees, and then the bass player. They're all just really incredible musicians who really just took it to another level. And again, some of the pieces are complex with different time signatures, and they were able to do that pretty well. So these are your top of the line musicians that I had, and there's violin, there's cello, and there's also I think there's an oboe on one
Yeah,
of the tracks
that rings
too.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's trombone, there's trumpet, so and there's a
Amazing.
sitar that I play on one of them, electric sitar. So there's lots of different instruments.
No, there is. Okay, so a celebration of Texas. I'm happy with that. I'm sure Texans will be as well. That's awesome. Um, Now, whenever I ask musicians what their favorite track of their album is, I've heard it's like choosing a child. But if you were to choose like today, is there a track that really resonates with you at this moment that you're sort of like, I really love this one. I really want people to hear this track today?
Right. I like you said, that's a good question. And yes, I like all the tracks, but I would say right now, Macaris, which is where John the Baptist was, at least that's where they think he was.
Yeah.
And that one to me, because it's really hard rock. And actually Marty Willson-Piper, he actually sings the part of Harold in there where this isn't in the Bible, but where he sorrow that he had John the Baptist killed. So I that to me, whenever I hear that track, I'm just like, wow, that's really cool. It's almost in a like, which in a way probably no one would think would mix. It's almost like in a Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin way that talks about John the Baptist, which again, I didn't think about that when I was writing. I was just writing it because that's what I wanted to write. But that's probably my favorite track right now.
Oh, that is such, I mean, there's not a bad choice to be clear, but that is such a good choice. That track, so is it Macaris? Is that how you say it?
I think, yeah, that's how you say it.
Yeah, yeah, that
Macarena,
track
I
really.
think it's Macaris,
Huh?
yeah.
Okay, no, I trust you. You've done the research on this one. You've been invested in this album for years. But no, I was listening to that track and I was, for the first time, reflecting as someone who follows Jesus. I hadn't really ever thought about John the Baptist's turmoil. I've always seen him as like a really faithful figure, a really powerful figure. And you managed to capture the vulnerability of his final movements, like the faithfulness of them, but also the humanity in him, which
Right.
for me was a real like I could imagine people listening to this but also seeing this on stage like a musical stage
Oh, yeah,
show,
yeah, yeah.
feeling like wow, I just feel like God or the divine or something bigger than me spoke to me through this moment, which
Mhm.
was really beautiful. I have a question. There may be no answer to this, but when you were writing all these tracks, but particularly this one, were you envisioning anyone singing them or performing them on a stage?
No, no, and in fact, the strange thing about it, I don't really, and I probably maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't really, I'm not a big Broadway fan.
Yeah,
I like plays, but I'm not a big Broadway fan. But I really wasn't envisioning it. I was just trying to tell the story. And actually, I was singing that part, and then when we were recording, I said, Marty, this would be great for you to sing because it would be a different voice. And it turns out that it really went well with that.
yeah, no, that's brilliant. I know. I think Jesus Christ Superstar has just come back to Australia, and so I keep seeing the advertisements on TV, and every time I'm just like, oh my gosh, it reminds me of that in great ways. So
Right.
I totally understand. That makes a ton of sense. Now, if someone is to play, stream, buy this album, I mean, obviously, my recommendation would be front to back because you need the full story of
Yes.
John the Baptist. I would that makes the most sense. Let's be honest. But in light of that full experience and how do you want it to impact people? What do you want it to mean to them spiritually? I guess.
Yeah, so obviously when they listen to it, I would love for them to listen to the whole thing in one sitting. I know that's hard nowadays because people, a lot of people just have a couple seconds where they pay attention to things. But if they can listen to the whole thing in one sitting, obviously the message is right there about John the Baptist. But even if you don't get that message, I would like everybody and anyone to listen to it to get from it what they can. And I think, maybe later on you can get whatever the other message is, about Jesus, but to listen to, because there's a lot of, messages about speaking the truth, that I think can hold true to anybody, listening to that, and what a figure. And like you said at the end, he has his doubts too, which people don't really talk about. And that's in that song, Macaris, which I really think it shows his, his human part of him, of John the Baptist.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's great how the story of John the Baptist, but also how you've put music to it and told that story in a fresh way. It makes it, well, I think it reminds us that as a human experience, that John
Right.
had like this profound belief in the divine, but no matter what the background is of the person listening to it or experiencing it, they can actually enter into his story. You've done
Right.
a beautiful job. The amount of work in this record is are ridiculous. And I say that it's the highest form of compliment. I was very overwhelmed by just how well you've placed it and produced it. So thank you so much for pouring your heart into this and then choosing to share it with the world.
Yes, thank you. And again, it's available on Bandcamp. It's available to stream February 3rd. And Marty Willson-Piper was the producer on it, who, it wouldn't have sounded anything like that, because he's got the expertise to really put that all together. So I give a lot of thanks to him, for that.
Absolutely. So Voice of One Crying in the Wilderness, available February 3, on all streaming platforms. How can people connect with you online, Brian, if they want to
So
connect
they
with
can go,
Valley of Salt?
right. So they can go on all the social media sites. If you go on my website, you can see all the places you can connect with me, um, and send me messages and send me how you like the album.
Perfect. Perfect. And that would be valleyofsalt.com.
Yeah, Valley of Salt Band. You can look that up, if you just Google
Gotcha.
Valley of Salt Band. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the picture of Valley of Salt will come up, in Israel. But so if you Google that Valley of Salt Band, everything should come up.
Perfect. And if you're watching this interview, all the links will be in the show notes below. So you can buy, stream, watch, connect, all of those wonderful things. Thank you so much, Brian, for chatting with me today. And thank you for this beautiful record. I'm very excited for your release today. I cannot wait to share this with the world.
Yes, and thank you for having me. It's greatly appreciated.